Football fans, grab your favorite food and a cooler full of drinks. It's time to tailgate. Whether you're serving up hot dogs and hamburgers or breaking out the barbecue, feel free to kick things up a notch with Frank's Red Hot. And when you're looking to cool it down, reach for a nice cold Bud Light. The team's going all the way this year. Make sure you're there to cheer them on. And don't forget to fire it up with Frank's Red Hot and cool it down with Bud Light. Enjoy responsibly. Anheuser-Busch Bud Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
At Kroger, no matter where you order free pickup, you get the same great deals as you'd get in-store. So you can save when you order during band practice, or at the dog park, or wherever. Start your cart with the Kroger app and save from wherever today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. $35 order minimum. Restrictions may apply. Subject to availability.
And now, shop what you love and save $2 on each participating item when you buy 3 or more with your card. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
There is no higher compliment a show host can pay than to say that today's guest is one of the easiest guests that I have ever spoken to. We've done it before. We're going to be talking to Matt Stroup in a couple of minutes on the show. But there's just something about, like, when you throw hosts at each other, I have to do so much less. I love it. One of the premier minds in fantasy sports and one of the premier voices. La Voz. Matt Stroup, host of Round Ball Stew over at Roto-World and NBC Sports Edge. So that's coming up in just a couple of minutes. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Fantasy NBA Today, a sports ethos presentation. I can already tell you that at the end of our hit, Matt was kind enough. I was like, hey, you got any late targets? He's like, how about 7? Here's your teaser for that interview. We also break down some of the early round issues that folks are running into, specifically the first and second round. Second round lately has moved back into the focus after it looked like maybe we were going to have like a 1-year respite from second round weirdness. I've been running some mocks, some of them publicly, some of them in secret, and I keep going back and forth on whether I'm willing to draft Anthony Davis. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Roto Games Cap, I'm a little bit more inclined to do so. It's tough. It's tough when you're head to head and you just like you need your guys to be on the floor. There's a big edge to just having dudes who are playing. You can roll the dice, try to go for the big hits, but they're not always going to work out. We talk a lot of roto strategy on this podcast. I think it's important every once in a while to just hint at a little bit of head to head. Important stuff here before we dive into our chat with Matt. Besides just whether or not I'm drafting Anthony Davis. By the way, the answer to the question of whether or not I'm going to be drafting LeBron James if he falls to me mid to late second round is a resounding yes. And I have this weird... I think last year, maybe because I had so many picks at 11 or 12 and so many Paul Georges and Jimmy Butlers that missed copious numbers of games last year, that I woke up for this season just feeling a little more adventurous. You remember the old Doritos commercials? That's bold, but is it daring? I feel like being bold and daring this year. So, like, just kind of doing things a little differently than I normally would. That's part of why I'm willing to take shots in the 5th round, 4th round this year, earlier than usual. Part of that is because I don't like the old men in the middle of drafts, but part of it is just because at some point, you can't eliminate all the fun. And I think I hit that point last year where I was like, look, I got to be so Dan, because now the brand is set. I'm the old man guy, that I sapped a lot of the fun. So we're bringing a little bit of the fun back. Not all of it, because winning is still the most important thing, but just a little bit of fun. And there's something about like a 38, how old is LeBron now? 37, 38-year-old LeBron James. If that team is looking good, and actually by all accounts, you guys are going to think this is insane, they've really been doing a lot of good stuff in the first half of their couple of preseason games. Just like better execution than last year, and 2 preseason games in. I just think that if the Lakers can get the vibes right, that's a good spot. And yet at the same time, my mental jury is very much deadlocked on Anthony Davis. But anyway, that's enough like pre-show fantasy. That was like a let me talk to you for a minute about the Lakers going in the second round opening non-rant. This is Fantasy NBA Today. I already said that. I'm Dan Vespers. You can follow me on Twitter at Dan Vespers. You can follow Sports Ethos on Twitter at Ethos Fantasy BK. It's harder to find now. It used to just be Hoopball Fantasy. That was simpler, but we have more things going on. Ethos Fantasy BK. That is the news feed. You must follow that feed. I command thee, thou, thine. I command all of you. Follow Ethos Fantasy BK. You're going to be getting all your fantasy news from there as this season wears on. Draft guide, obviously out, has been for some time. Most importantly, however, 2 things. First, the Brewski 150 goes into the Fantasy Pass in about a day and a half. So that's pretty awesome. And second, loyalty promos. A lot of you guys forgot to claim them. I know many of you that listen to this podcast have had our Fantasy Pass for a few years running now. If you've had the Fantasy Pass for a full season without a break, meaning you just left it on, you actually get access to the B150 5 days early, which would have been, I think, 2.5 days ago. So if you have questions about that, hit me up on Twitter at Dan Vespers. You can also write in to roster@sportsethos.com. But make sure you claim that loyalty bonus. And to the rest of you signing up for the Fantasy Pass for the first time this year, something to think about. It's a way to get the B150 5 days early without having to buy the really big package with betting and DFS. And like, if you don't use those things, I get it. You don't want to do the 6-month lock. Do the Fantasy Pass, which is still really, really affordable, and just leave it on. Not to mention you lock in the rate, so if the price ever goes up, yours would not also. So that's Fantasy Pass and the loyalty stuff. Points Leagues ranks, CBS, ESPN, Category League projections, those are all in the draft guide right now. Auction League ranks are coming right around the corner. And then, of course, the B150, Brewski 150, goes into the Fantasy Pass in 2.5 days. No, sorry, 1.5 days. Did I say 2.5? It's 1.5. Check that out. Keep helping us grow. 1 retweet and Fantasy Pass membership at a time. We are also down to our last 4 slots for Ethos Leagues. They are all in a cash roto format. However, if you want to play in a cash head-to-head, free roto, whatever, hit me up about that as well. We have wait lists going, and if those wait lists hit 12 teams, we'll just open up a new whatever type of league that is. That's all. It can all be done on Twitter at Dan Vespers or via email by sending it to roster@sportsethos.com. Okay, enough waiting. We talked LeBron, we talked AD, we talked what's going on at Sports Ethos. Let's talk to Matt. Well, we couldn't get him in the industry mock because the son of a gun was on a plane when we were getting that thing fired up. But you know what? He needs to be on the show anyway. Matt Stroup, welcome back, man. It's good to talk to you again.
Thanks. You know, I live a real jet-setting life, Dan. So, like, I'm actually on my way to the airport right now. It's just constant flights here. Mostly private jets and that kind of thing.
It's hard to pin down someone as adventurous, worldly, and cool as you are. But
you should see my passport. I definitely have an up-to-date passport, and it has been stamped very recently, internationally.
That was the joke I was going to make about my own. I think the last time I used mine was my honeymoon, so that would have been like 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe I went into Canada one time. Do you even need to get it looked at to do that?
No. That's fine. That's just go on through, breeze on through, slow down to 35 and head on through.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. So yeah, we're very, very cultured individuals here, but we did manage to get a time that worked out. We won't be talking about a mock draft. We're just going to be talking about fantasy basketball and drafting in general, a little more broad stroke type of stuff. Matt, of course, you can find on Twitter at Matt Stroup, keeping it nice and easy. Last name is Stroup. He is at NBC Sports Edge /RotoWorld. I've been told that there's like a hybridization of the names now, and Man, that's really nice because I got NBC Sports Edge wrong all the time, and I apologized every time I did it, and then I continued to screw it up. As the lead host over there, I'm assuming you couldn't get away with screwing it up every time, but it must be nice to bring Roto-World back into the mix, right?
Oh, for sure. Love them both. It's nice to have options, you know?
That's right.
Sometimes say Roto-World, say NBC Sports Edge. It's NBC's, Roto-World Player News page powered by NBC Sports Edge is what I like to say all the time.
Right. That's the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and I was talking to Jonas about this too. Jonas Nader, who's also with you over there at Roto-World NBC Sports Edge. Like Roto-World is what I grew up on, like
for sure.
Early 2000s, reading Doc, reading Brew. So it is really cool to see that back in the mix. But let's talk some fantasy basketball.
Yes.
Matt, things have over the last week, really, because Yahoo keeps moving their X rank board, and then that sort of trickles down onto ADP stuff. The first and second round, I thought were fairly locked in, and then they moved a decent amount over again, like the last 5 days. This all happened, so I kind of want to get your feelings on these big name guys because that's what drives a fantasy team. If you screw up your first or second round pick, you're really in a pickle. So
go home. If you do that, just go home and stay home.
I mean, that's kind of what happened to me in the NBC Sports Edge League last year. I had Dame in the first, and when he was out after a month and a half, my team had no shot.
Yeah,
so how do you, looking at this year's board, how do you avoid, I'm going to say avoid disaster in the first round, because when it happens, it is a bit out of the blue, but what do you like in the first? What scares you a little bit? That's a very broad question, but you're a broadcaster, so I feel like I can do this to you.
Yeah.
What do you like? What do you dislike about the first?
Well, what scares me is that I'm going to make the wrong decision on Kevin Durant. That's the first strong feeling that I have.
Ooh, where are you leaning right now?
Well, that's the thing. I think minute to minute I can talk myself into either thing, And I've noticed in the recent drafts I've been doing, he's going early, right? I mean, this dream I had over the summer of Kevin Durant falling to like 10th because of his age and injury risk, it doesn't seem to be coming to fruition.
No.
His ADP on Yahoo is 4.5. And so, we're talking about a guy who on a per game basis was, I believe, second overall in 9 category leagues last year.
Yeah.
But played 55 games. And I mean, I don't know. You can't say, well, he's going to miss 25 plus again, but it's certainly possible. And so I'm worried. I just don't think I'm going to do it. I think I'm too risk averse to take a guy who I just feel like I know is going to miss 20 games or that seems likely to me. So then again, one of my main leagues, I lost to the team that had Kevin Durant in the championship because Kevin Durant was crushing me the last month of the season, and he didn't miss a single game the last month. So,
yeah, that was when didn't he just say just play me, just drive me into the ground. He's playing 39 minutes a game there,
dominating. So I mean, who would you other than Jokic? If everyone's healthy, right? Everyone's healthy, guaranteed health. Everyone's going to play 75 games. If we live in that world, it's Jokic and then it's Durant.
Yeah, I didn't want to input any of my own bias in this, but I'm actually very pro Kevin Durant this year.
Yeah. So
mostly because last year's injury was one big injury.
Right.
It wasn't like the typical old man stuff of, out for 3 games with or Jimmy Butler is a great example last year of the old man season that we all want to avoid. He had the tailbone injury and he came back and immediately got hit in the butt again. And was out for another 2 weeks, and then it was the knee, and then it was the back, and then it was the elbow, and it's 3 games 10 times adds up a ton. With KD, it was what do you have, 2 or 3 games he missed for little things, and then 20 for the knee sprain. And so I think I can write a little bit of that off to happenstance. Man, anybody could have a knee sprain and miss 2 months. Adebayo had surgery and missed 2 months with an elbow thing. I'm big time into KD this year, actually, and I play a lot of roto leagues too.
I'm coming around. In the last 2 to 3 minutes, I've fully come around. Like I said, I was unsure before. I'm in. Number 5, if he's there, I think there's a good chance I'll take him.
Aren't there a lot of kind of risky plays in the first round for whatever reason? I mean, I don't know. They're not all the same as the KD injury thing, but you got Embiid going near the top of it. He's a risk. Steph is not a traditional risk, but he's off a championship year.
Yeah.
Harden's missing games these days, although I know he jokes he's lost 100 pounds. Whether that's a joke or not is sort of yet to be seen. I mean, he might have actually lost 100 pounds. Giannis, the Bucks don't want him playing more than 68, 69 games in a year. So who's not a risk in the first?
I agree. I mean, look at last year's first round. The only guys who played more than 70 games as last year's first round players are Jokic, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Trae Young.
Yeah.
And you have Jason Tatum, who, depending on your scoring, but in traditional 9 category, is right on the fringe there, essentially a first rounder. He played more than 70. That's it. And so, I mean, I think those are kind of the Iron Man guys, right, out of the first rounders. Other than that, yeah, Luka we think of as pretty durable, but he played 65 games. So, 65 is kind of just the median number, I feel like, for NBA stars these days.
Yeah, if you get 65 out of KD, he's probably the number 2 player this coming year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to push you in any direction. I'm glad
you did it. All right, it's done. It's done. I'm taking him.
It's fine. I'll do a podcast with somebody who only plays head-to-head leagues. They will definitely convince you the other direction. You're stuck with old Roto Dan over here.
No. I'm a mostly head-to-head league guy, and I think that, like I said, I just laid out the case for Durant right there too, because he was there at the end for you last year.
Yeah, and then you talked about Trae as one of the durable ones. Certainly a 9-cat. There is a fear that the DeJounte Murray addition, what does that do to him? Does that push him now out of the... And he was kind of at the end of the first round. I think he was number 10. But the durability was nice, and Tatum hanging around just outside the first round. So, yeah, you got a lot of... You're like picking between someone who's probably going to be lower down on the per-game totem pole, but, maybe more likely to play an extra 6 or 7 ball games versus, KD. Who can even come close to him in per-game production? Embiid was the only one last year. Do you see anybody this season that could make a leap into that Embiid, KD, like just behind Jokic? Not just behind last year, but you know what I mean. Could anybody jump into that like 2 to 3 range on the per game side?
Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches,
urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
It's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.
Football fans, grab your favorite food and a cooler full of drinks. It's time to tailgate. Whether you're serving up hot dogs and hamburgers or breaking out the barbecue, feel free to kick things up a notch with Frank's Red Hot. And when you're looking to cool it down, reach for a nice cold Bud Light. The team's going all the way this year. Make sure you're there to cheer them on. And don't forget to fire it up with Frank's Red Hot and cool it down with Bud Light. Enjoy responsibly. Anheuser-Busch Bud Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
I feel like I look at Tatum, and I think in theory that might be in there, a guy who could, because Durant, what's the blueprint? It's 30 points, it's 7.5 rebounds, it's 6.5 assists, it's a steal, a block, and it's threes and good percentages. Tatum,
all the things.
That's all it is. No big deal. You look at Tatum, he's not that far off of that. He'd need a spike in assists from like the 4.5 a game he had. He'd need some more blocks, which I'm not super confident in. So I think he has kind of the skill set across the board to maybe jump into the top 5, but I guess I'll kind of believe that when I see it.
What do you think about a guy like Tyrese Halliburton, who I've seen him go as early as 5? I don't see him go much later than about 14 these days. Have we priced him out? I guess maybe we price him out somewhere in between those two numbers.
I think we've gone a little too far. I think that, there's this FOMO with Tyrese Halliburton, which I get. I really do, because what was he with Indiana? Like 17.5 points, almost 10 assists, 1.8 steals. And he's openly talked. I read a story from Alex Kennedy over the summer that Tyrese Halliburton, with quotes from Tyrese Halliburton, talking about being a 20-10 guy. Well, he almost was that in Indiana. So, I mean, I get it. But if you're telling me I can get him in the second round, I'm thrilled. If you're telling me I got to take him top 5, I'm going to let someone else do that.
Yeah, I think I'm probably with you on that one. I feel like we probably have priced him out a little bit. My other early round discussion point is more about the second round now, which as recently as even 2 weeks ago, I thought was a more fun second round. Last year, I hated it, and then it turned out to be, yes, as terrible as I thought it was going to be. Sometimes you kind of hate a round, and then it turns out to not be that bad. Last year was like, everybody's like, oh, the second round is awful. And then outside of LaMelo Ball, it basically did turn out to be kind of awful.
Right.
And this year it was like, oh, this one, maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room. And then all of a sudden the board shifted and everybody, opinions came out and the board shifted another time. And now it looks an awful lot like the second round board last year with maybe different names, but with the same kind of decisions where at the very beginning of it, you've got a little bit more than you had last year. It's not nearly as horrible to be the 11 or 12 pick this season as it was last year. In fact, you could even argue it's kind of okay.
You could even argue it's good, depending on how your draft goes.
But it sure does feel like by pick 15 in the second round, it looks a lot like pick 13 through 24 last year. Like that same run starts again. It's just a tiny bit later where you're picking between the likes of Kyrie, Anthony Davis, LeBron, Freddie VanVleet. Basically, Paul George is going to be in the mix at some point in there. A whole bunch of guys who, it's like the conversation we just had with Kevin Durant, but even less durable. There's upside there, but how much confidence do we have that they get anywhere near it? Or do you slide towards the guys that are typically going at the back of the second round, which maybe they're a little bit more healthy, but they don't have that, top 6, top 7. We saw LeBron go top 5 last year. Kawhi's always in that 6 to 7 range. AD is an easy first rounder. Kyrie. What do you do with the second round? Are you able to talk yourself into any of those old guys? Do you go the safe route? I admit I'm struggling with it way more now than I was even a week ago.
Well, so I mean, we're talking about a scenario where are Lillard and Halliburton gone? We're saying their ADP on Yahoo is like 15 and 16 respectively. So we're talking about past that point in the draft, right? Or they went slightly before that, or they went around there, or in the case of Halliburton, maybe he went 5th. So putting those guys aside, I can talk myself into Anthony Davis. I don't see myself doing that in every league. There's just so much risk, right? The games played, I think I was pulling this up earlier today. Hold on. The last 4 years, I think his average games played is like 49.
Yeah, it's not great.
Oh, that's terrifying, right? And that's year over year. It's just been a concern. To me, lately in the drafts, I've had a couple slow drafts going this week, and I had a couple picks in the kind of 19 range. And
that's a tough spot, by the way. That's a tough spot.
I know, and I took a guy who goes by the name of DeJounte Murray.
I like that one there.
Plays for the Atlanta Hawks. And you were just talking about...
A little bit of a homer pick. A little homer pick there, right?
Possibly. But, you were... Well, I mean, I can be guilty of that. But I'll also try to explain why. And I know that that's kind of right around his ADP, so it's not like anything adventurous. But why I'm intrigued is you talked about Trae Young and the worry that, DeJounte dings his numbers. And obviously there's the vice versa there where Trae dings DeJounte's numbers. But I guess my counter argument is like, what if they don't that much? What if the usage just funnels through those two guys so much and everyone else like John Collins and Clint Capella just has to, get their shots when they get them. And it's those two guys running the show. Of course, I don't think we're going to see those guys average the same assists they averaged last year, right? Trae 9.7, DeJounte Murray 9. Okay. We'll discount there, but DeJounte Murray was 21 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists last year with 2 steals. We expect him to be great in steals. What if his numbers don't drop off that much? He was a top 7 player last year. I just think the path to, 17, 18 points good rebounds, 7 or 8 rebounds, 7 or 8 assists, a couple steals. He's almost right there. I mean, does that make sense to you?
It does, yeah, actually. And one of the things there was that first rebound effect with him where, he was getting drafted in the mid-third, and you knew that had bounced down too far. And then he's kind of worked his way back up now towards the mid-late second round. But the nice thing about Murray that you can't really say about Trey is that the steals and the rebounds create kind of a buffer against a usage fall-off. Where, like with Trey, if the usage falls off, that's everything that he does. Scoring, threes, assists, the free throw percent. Like the only thing that would be a negative for him there, or the only thing that would buffer it, I guess, is that the turnovers would maybe come down a little bit. But that's not enough to counterbalance losses in 3 or 4 other categories. With Murray, if the usage comes down a little, do the points decrease, do the assists decrease? Maybe. But he has those rebounds, which should stick. He has the steals, he has the blocks, he has the field goal percent. That's typically a little bit better. I mean, I assume it'll actually improve here as having someone else that draws defense as opposed to San Antonio last year.
Right.
It also of note is that Trey is basically being drafted where he was being drafted last year. There hasn't really been an ADP sag for him in the way that with Murray, pre-trade, he was probably going to get drafted mid-first, and now it's late second. So there has been a big ADP sag on him. So yeah, it's not crazy. Again, I'm trying not to... I want to do a little devil's advocate here, but at the end of it, like you talked about Kevin Durant, I'm actually very pro Kevin Durant. I like DeJounte Murray. Also, if he really is, where do you go in our industry mock? I think he went at 22 in that. I'd be very happy to get him near the end of the second round. Would you take him? Would you take him instead of guys like Kyrie, AD, that contingent where like if they're on the court, they're probably a top 7, top 8 guy. But will they be on the court? Would you bypass that kind of upside because of the risk and go to someone who's less risky a little later?
I just almost faced this decision in a league I'm in where I think Anthony Davis went 18th and I had the 19th pick, and I was kind of like going to look in the mirror and say, what am I doing here? Am I going to take Anthony Davis or am I going to take DeJounte Murray? I lean slightly toward DeJounte and over Anthony Davis and Kyrie just because of what you referenced in terms of injury risk and Kyrie sometimes not seeming like he wants to play that many games. So,
yeah, Kyrie is a really weird one. I had a really good chat with Jonas about Kyrie. He actually ended up with him in the industry mock this year where he was like, look, he laid out this very reasonable, logical explanation as to why Kyrie should play in, 68 or more ball games. And I think my retort was, that all makes a ton of sense, but can we apply logic to Kyrie Irving?
Logic. Yes, you use logic. You just use logic.
Because it was he needs to show up for work for 1 year, and he'll probably get a $200 million contract. For most of us, that makes a lot of sense. I would show up to work for that year.
Yeah.
But Kyrie, hard to say. Okay, let me jump way down the board a little bit, because I want to make sure I can actually get you back to your day. And let's talk about some of the late stuff. You typically, Matt, talking to Matt Stroup, by the way, probably should have said that again at some point earlier in the show.
I'm here.
At Matt Stroup on Twitter. Follow immediately. Obviously, easier way to find him would be the tag. We're going to tag him when this goes out, so you can just do that also. You have, in the past on this show, given out some very interesting late targets, many of whom have actually panned out very nicely.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yes. And I think we did this 2 years ago and last year, right? Isn't this the third?
You could tell me it's the 10th consecutive year. You could tell me it's the first time we've ever spoken, and I would say both of those are true.
It's very hard to remember anything that's happened, specifically since 2020, but also just kind of in general.
And by the way, Dan, I didn't mean that to sound like you're not memorable. That was not what I was saying.
I know I'm not.
Hey, look, I know that this is the third to fourth year in a row that we've done this podcast.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Trying to remember anything I've done is such a task right now. So let's do that again with your blessing. Who are... This is such a cheap way to ask this question, but damn it, I'm going to do it. And give me a sleeper or two, Matt. Give me the shiny diamond, the thing that the listeners are going to be like, oh, yes, here we go.
I'm going to give you a 7. How's that?
Oh, my God. I might need to write these down.
Well, okay. So let's just. So before we came on here, I was kind of combing through the Yahoo ADP, and granted, depending on how competitive your league is that you're in, this may not be the case at all in your league. But one name that really stuck out to me, and I was just in a draft where I can attest he was falling, is Gary Trent Jr. Has a 92 ADP on Yahoo. This guy was basically a top 40 fantasy player last year, a guy who averaged 3 3-pointers and I believe 1.7 or 1.8 steals. That's a lot of steals late in your draft potentially. And I know the downside here, maybe the risk is that what if they bring him off the bench? What does that look like? But I mean, at that point, it's kind of a free swing on a top 50 guy. I don't know. This is one that kind of befuddles me. I don't know why he's falling so far.
Yeah, we had a good chat pre-show, and I was like, we should probably try to recreate that on the pod, but I felt disingenuous not letting listeners know that we actually did talk a little bit about Gary Trent already.
Yeah.
And it struck us both as kind of similar to the Terry Rozier phenomenon, which is like, this guy was top 40, and then last year he went at like 80 anyway.
I know.
And then he was top 40 again, and now he's finally going at like 50-something, so there's starting to be some belief.
Still too low, by the way. Still like 2 rounds too low.
Yeah, based on what we've seen for 2 full years now, it still doesn't quite make sense. But this does feel a little bit like that, doesn't it? Provided he keeps the starting job, like why would anything really change for him?
Right, sure. And I mean, that is, of course, draft him with eyes open, know that there's a chance that Nick Nurse, ruins this whole thing. But I don't know. I think Trent, this is a guy who averaged 35 minutes a game last year. The roster is not that different.
No.
It just strikes me that in all likelihood, Trent is going to be a significant piece of that. And even if he falls off a little from last year, to like 65, if you got him like 80 or 90, that's a great pick. So an elite steals guy who's going real late in drafts. Jumping around a little bit here, I don't know where you land on this one, but I'm pretty high on Jalen Smith of the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, I like him too. And you got to think that Miles Turner's getting moved for whatever that's worth. Although I think Smith is probably starting anyway, no?
Yeah, Rick Carlisle told us like months ago. What a solid Rick Carlisle did fantasy managers.
Which is pretty rare, by the way.
He got way out. It was like, June or something. He was like, by the way, I'm starting that guy at power forward. It's like, oh, thank you, Rick. So yeah, they re-signed him. He was real solid in, I think, like 24, 25 minutes a game for the Pacers. He was around 13 points, 7 boards, had a block, almost 1.5 threes. He's a young guy. He's a former, I think, lottery pick. I mean, I just think there's some sneaky ceiling here, and his Yahoo ADP is 120. I saw him go in one of my drafts around 90, but still, right there. I mean, that's another free swing on an upside guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. He was number 86, I think, over the last month and a half with Indiana in 24, 25 minutes per game. So you just extrapolate that, assume no massive changes to fantasy stat. I know that sometimes as guys sort of approach higher numbers, things level off a little bit, but just keep them on the court 3-4 extra minutes a ball game, and you can do the math pretty easily there. That puts him in front of where he's getting drafted. You haven't said anything I've disagreed with so far.
Okay.
You can keep going if you want.
Let's see. What can I get you to disagree with? Well, I'm interested in, let's see. Well, I was totally shocked. I don't know when we're going to run out of time, so I got to say this. I was totally shocked to see, I pulled up again the Yahoo ADP and see Jabari Smith going 119th overall on average.
Okay, so
that kind of stuns me.
I don't know rookies all that well.
Yeah, you're not a rookie guy.
Yeah.
You're not a rookie guy. That's
so
right.
Here you go. You can get me to argue, I guess, on this one, but my argument is basically like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a bad argument.
So I know he had a good preseason is preseason, right? But 21 points, 8 boards, 5 3-pointers in 24 minutes. I believe in his preseason debut. Yeah. Just, a guy who had a chance to go number 1 in the draft, a great shooter. I think he has a potential to get you some defensive stats as well, rebounds. I don't know. I'm just really high on the player. And even if he's at pick 100, right, I'll move him up, or pick 95 or whatever it is, moving up from there. I love a free swing like that. I know that rookies, I think the highest finishing rookie in 9 category leagues last year was Scotty Barnes, who was 66th, right? Yeah. But I mean, Evan Mobley was a great fantasy contributor. There were a bunch of significant rookies, relevant rookies last year, and I think Jabari Smith is one of them, and I think anything after 100 is a little too late for that.
Yeah, and you're looking at his college numbers, he's a decent foul shooter for a bigger dude. I know he's not like a traditional center or power forward. He's sized like a power forward, but he's doing a lot of shooting from the perimeter. So you kind of have to, you're going to get kind of the mismatched percentages where field goal is probably going to be the slight drag. But yeah, I mean, like one of the things I have said, jokes aside, is that I need to soften my stance a bit on rookie bigger dudes. Specifically ones who are not going to tank your free throw percent. And technically he does fall into that, even if the field goal is a little bit lower. But, points, boards, doesn't have to worry about handling the basketball, so he's not going to be like a 4 turnover guy like a rookie point guard might be. You just eliminate some of the rookie pitfall stats. And then, wings and bigs, they do have a way of, like you're talking about Mobley, rookie bigger man. And he actually had some troubles at the free throw line, but those are the guys that tend to overperform their rookie ADP a little bit. The only clock here actually is for me making sure that you don't mess up your whole day. So if you'd like to keep going, you're more than invited.
Sure. The two guys on the Blazers going on average outside the top 100 in Yahoo are Anthony Simons and Josh Hart. And Simons, I guess we're dropping him because Lillard is back. But, I mean, they paid the guy $100 million. I think he's going to play a lot for this team. And I don't know what the fantasy blueprint necessarily is outside of points and threes when Lillard is healthy. But, again, that late in a draft, I really don't mind taking a shot to find out.
Yeah, starters minutes. If you can find anybody with starters minutes outside the top 100, they're probably at least worth a look. You know? Like, you're debating a guy that might play 32 minutes a game and get a bunch of shots versus someone who, like, you're like, oh, well, maybe and I've done this many times where I'm like, oh, the stat set's so great here. This guy's going to probably play 18, but maybe he gets like 22 minutes per game. Right. Those guys should probably be later than the dudes playing 32 or 33. Give me one more, because I know you said 7, so we'll do, what do we have, 5? Let's do 6 of your 7.
Okay, I'm going to say the name Trey Jones of the Spurs.
Well, I know Doc loves him.
Yeah.
He's a big Trey Jones fan. I get this, I get a little bit of a Monty Morris vibe from a fantasy standpoint of decent assists, and he was able to keep the turnovers relatively low. I guess my only fear there is, young point guard type stuff. How does field goal percent level up? How does he do turnovers spike as he starts to get a little bit more of a role? But again, as like flyers go, I can't really get upset with it. He's going when? Like after 95, right?
108, again, on Yahoo. That may not exactly reflect your league, but yeah, after 95 is a reasonable guess.
I have trouble like nitpicking late round picks. You know, like big deal. If one of these guys doesn't pan out, you just cast him off into the ocean. Who cares?
Yeah. And so as a starter last year, 13.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists in 11 games, and a steal. He didn't hit threes. I think he had 3 3-pointers in those 11 games, so you're not going to get that from him. But, I mean, that's part of the reason he's going as late as he is, that and just kind of the unknown factor. But 7.5 assists is a bigger than a Monty Morris number. You know what I mean?
That is true. And there's no Jokic on the Spurs.
I don't know if Trey Jones can do that 7.5 over a full season, but that's a legit number for like a guy who, if a guy does that as a fill-in, I'm paying attention, and so I like him. And by the way, Monte Morris is an interesting sleeper as well, playing with the Wizards now. I think my colleague Raphael Johnson really likes him this year.
I haven't. My verdict is out on Monte Morris this year. I hope that he wakes up and just becomes more aggressive this season.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have faith that he will. I feel like Monte sort of is who he is. He's probably a guy who's a better reality player than he is a fantasy player. Very efficient point guard who had his but like he's not in Jokic's shadow. Now it's Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis, but like how does that even out? Will he initiate more? Maybe. The assists, I would assume, would be higher anywhere where there is not Jokic. But, like with Jones you were talking about, not going to get many steals. Monty Morris isn't a steals guy. He's not going to shoot a ton of three-pointers, but good field goal percent, good free throw percent, good assist-to-turnover ratio, typically one of the best. I don't know. The upside is not huge for me on Morris.
It's not. I agree there, and that's not That's not a sleeper that I will proactively reach for. But I mean, you get it late in a draft, and you got to fill out your queue and find some guys you can stomach drafting.
Yeah.
I think that's
he's
the
actually
guy.
probably better for head-to-head than he is for roto because he's going to probably play most of the ball games, and sometimes at the end of a draft, you need a guy who's top 100 and is just there every day.
Right.
Because zeros kill you.
That guy shows up to work.
That's right. Well, that's saying a lot these days.
Yeah. 75 games last year, 12.5 points, 4.5 assists, 1.7 threes. Doesn't turn it over for a point guard, only one of those. So he's kind of a floor guy more than a ceiling guy. But we could see a little more ceiling. Like you said, at last check, there is no Jokic playing for the Wizards.
Yeah, you mostly gave me ceiling guys. I like that we slipped in a floor guy at the end there.
Let's get a little floor in there.
A little floor. Matt, you're officially out of the hot seat. Get up, stretch your legs, whatever you got to do. Make it work.
Quite pleasant. The temperature of the seat was quite pleasant.
Yeah, it was a seat warmer. It's like a nice plush. It's not really a hot seat. It just keeps the back loose.
Okay, you have great chairs. On this, on this podcast.
And people that listen to this know that the only chair that anybody's in over here is in the corner of my bedroom/office. So I pray you're in a very different chair than that.
No, I'm actually here. I'm over here. I'm underneath that blanket that you're seeing there.
Yeah, not the 2.5-year-old draft board. That's my backdrop for everything.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the back of that right now.
Oh, that's fine. So you're back there with the dog on the other side. That works.
Yeah.
He is Matt Stroup over at RotoWorld/NBC Sports Edge at Matt Stroup on Twitter. Check out everything he's doing, including the draft show. Although that actually, by the time this airs, that is probably airing at about the same time, roughly.
You can hear it on you can hear the audio version of that on my podcast, Round Ball
Stew. Yes, there we go. That's a better way to do the timestamp thing when you record in advance. Good thinking, fellow broadcaster whose head is on much straighter than mine right now. Matt, thanks, my man. Thanks for doing this and carving out the time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Dan. Always fun to come on here.
Sorting through a lot of sleepers these days. That's where we're at. Big thank you to Matt Stroup, as always. Don't you dare call that man Stroup. It's Stroup. Get it right or pay the price. That in Camp Anawana. He's right, though, about Gary Trent. That's a funny thing. I don't know if we can always say that it takes people, the general public, lists, whatever, that if it takes 3 seasons for people to believe or 2 seasons for people to believe. But we have seen that lately with, generally these shooting guard types. I don't know why that's the mold right now, but that's where we're at. And it seems like a new one pops up every year, so be a little less skeptical. Might be the lesson there. Coming up on tomorrow's show, the big dog, Aaron Bruski, founder of what was originally Hoopball, and now Sports Ethos. He'll be on the show. We'll talk first and second round with Aaron as well, because I always want to get his thoughts on what direction he's going, how much risk is he willing to take on, depending on league type. High-stakes leagues, you probably got to take a little bit more risk, because you're not going to win them being conservative, and he's in those. But just for the most common leagues, where do you go in those areas? We'll talk to Brew about the Brewski 150. We'll talk to Brew about projections. We'll talk to Brew about how he comes to his numbers that dominate the landscape every year. And of course, I will badger him until he gives us one of his diamonds in the rough. I'll do it. I will do it because I'd like to say I'm doing it for all of you listening, but I'm doing it for myself because it's funny. I have access to the Brewski 150, so I don't actually have to badger him. I could just really deep dive that thing and find them, but it's more fun. It's more hilarious. I derive a certain joy about making him squirm on the podcast, which I think we all do with our bosses, right? I'm going to mess with Brew for you guys, but also for me. Next week on the pod, we'll talk to Josh Lloyd. We'll be on. Dr. A will be on. I think we'll get Adam Stock on the show next week. We'll likely have Brew back on the show. Lining them all up, and at that point, we got 2 more shows before the season starts. Thank you again, everybody, for making this the most listened to offseason in the history of Fantasy NBA today. As long as the show keeps growing, I will keep doing it. Drop a 5-star review on it on iTunes if you want it to keep growing. I hope you do. Have a delightful, relaxing Thursday. Off-season episode 129? Question mark? Doesn't matter. Either way, we keep prepping. Let's get this thing done. I'll talk to you guys over on social at Dan Vespers and the Sports Ethos forums. They are chugging. You got pro Q&A in there. Premium pro Q&A going every day. All right, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. So long, everybody.
Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches,
urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
It's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.